Stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the
Welcome and introductions. Dr. Gilman.
Randy Gilman, Assistant Superintendent, Elementary.
Tammy Cardona, Assistant Superintendent, Secondary.
Jim Shalhoub, Director.
Vicki Hansen, Board Member.
Scott Stewart, Board Treasurer.
John
Sandy
Brazil,
Min-
CFO.
That's okay.
Zachlyn Fitzpatrick, Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Kelly Brock, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources.
Judy Smith, Board Member.
Dawn Mullins, Board Member.
Steve Holloway, Board Vice President.
Nisha Patel, Superintendent.
Carol Yount, Board President, and
Sandy Manchella, Board Secretary.
we just skipped right over her. Dr. Gilman, do we have patron comments this evening?
We do have a few comments this evening. I'd like to remind our speakers this evening that problems involving a particular identifiable employee and/or students are reserved for executive session.
Excuse me, Dr. Gilman, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we do need approval of the agenda before we continue.
No worries.
So could I have a motion to approve the agenda for this evening? February 4th, 2020, I need a motion.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, Dr. Gilman, continue. I'm
All
sorry.
right, no worries. A 3-minute time period will be allowed per speaker. A warning will be given after 2.5 minutes. The Vice President of the Board will be the timekeeper. We will take these in the order received, and first up is Mr. Jim Osha, who wants to talk about Prop P.
Good evening, and first off, I'd like to thank the administration for clarifying days missed and whatnot, and actually giving the kids a break this year on the snow days. It looks like the old Missouri weather's hitting again. Summer Monday, and who knows tomorrow and Thursday. Anyway, we as adults are entrusted with teaching our kids, protecting our kids, and providing towards their future. I, along with some, think that the tweaking of this budget isn't in the best interest of the kids. To change from a new building at Antonia Elementary to throwing roughly $7 million at a problem that's just going to keep going. Yeah, I know 2 architectural firms came in and said the building structure is fine, but there's so many issues I don't think $7 million could solve. I think we should build a new school for those kids. Those kids are first entrance into our district in the elementary. And if they're walking into a building that's falling apart despite its bones being good, that's not a good impression of what they're gonna feel. And we have plenty of land by the middle school down there. And I think the ultimate end game is to eventually have a campus like here at Fox and Seckman, to have an elementary, a middle, and a high school down there. Plus, reading some over the report from KRJ, and I can't think of the other one, the hallways aren't big enough, and if we're going to eventually expand, because eventually growth's going to go that way, we have a port coming in, either in Herculaneum or around Kimmswick. I don't know off the top of my head exactly where that's coming in. You might have people moving in that'll work at the port, so there's more kids there. So if we want to provide for our kids, I think we need to seriously consider it more than just $7 million for Antonia. Also, too, I know last year in Prop S there was no provision in there for if you had to close a school. You get into renovating a school like Merrimack Heights, you might run into, hopefully there's no more asbestos, even though these buildings are old. I don't know how the district over the years has dealt with that. But if you start tearing into a building, you might run into a problem. You have to close the school, and there's more money that you didn't allocate or have a plan. So my thought is we need to have a plan, and hopefully, even though it's going on the ballot, you guys consider a lot of things and why we need to replace AstroTurf that's not that old. Doesn't make sense. I can understand if it was natural turf. Yeah, that gets torn up. I've been on the field here at Fox with some events, and it didn't seem that bad. Now, I never got to play on it. Unfortunately, I'm older than some of the kids, but I've talked to people that have played on fields like that, and it's actually almost worse. But I don't know why we need to replace that when we've got so many other issues to fix in our schools, especially in the buildings. So I would hope that you would consider maybe taking that off the agenda, putting that money towards Antonia and other places. I know a budget like this with $40 million and as big as a project we are going to have people that aren't going to be happy. I mean, you can't give everybody what they want. You know, it's like a kid. If you keep telling a kid yes, 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 they're just going to want more. But we have to be smart with $40 million. And then if we're going to, down the road, have to ask for the taxpayers, they want to see how we spend the money that they're going to loan to the district without any repayment. The end result is having a good school district, obviously, but having buildings, even if they're old or remodeled. And I know I said last board meeting that you can use old buildings, but in this situation, I think it's way beyond utilizing as a school. So I hope you guys consider all of the issues there and decide to, you know what, we need to take some of this money from other places and build them a school. I know it won't make people happy. They're expecting or thinking other stuff, but I hope you guys take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker this evening is Matt Hall, and wants to speak also on Prop P as it relates to Antonia Elementary.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me speak this evening. My name is Matt Hall. I currently reside at 6135 Mystic Point in Imperial, Missouri, more particularly Antonia, Missouri, where I grew up as a kid. Got some history in that area, like many of our Antonia staff and families do. Went to that school back in the 80s, enjoyed it, loved the school, lots of history. Also have lots of history down the road and a beautiful piece of property, about 180 acres off of St. Luke's Church Road. I was fortunate enough to be able to run around on that piece of property, do some hunting, do some hiking, do some caving in all the sinkholes that were around there. Certainly sad when that was sold, but further ecstatic knowing that it was sold to the Fox School District with the prospect of building a campus that my children would once be able to attend. So very neat. So fast forward a few years, moved back to the area, built a house, planted some roots, and we were still talking about the new Antonia Elementary School being built down the road. Got some young children, one of them's here tonight, and I was hopeful that she would get a chance to attend that new school. And then just a couple days ago, we heard that chance was minimized and the options were reconfigured, and that the priorities were shuffled a little bit. So a little upset based on that. So I'm still digesting some of the information that was put out there in the board meeting last time with the proposals and the information out there. So I am digesting some of that. But some of the things that I noticed from my review that I wanted to throw out there might be a little outside the box, but some additional considerations or things that may or may not be addressed that I think should be. One of the things is, has anybody considered the future expansion of the quarry across the street? Knox County Stone owns about 400 acres, close to 500 acres right across the street, and they are expanding. They're marking and flagging areas back through there that flank Freedman's Farm, and they're going to go westward as well, directly across from the school. So that future expansion could certainly mean some additional structural integrity issues that are at the school. It's an aging campus, as we know. Along those lines, based on the initial analysis done, yes, it's structurally sound. It was a good, well-built school. I felt comfortable there and safe there. But as the report indicated, there are further analysis is warranted by a structural engineer. And I wonder when those might happen. Should those happen later and those issues are found later? What happens if we proceed with the budget to expand and renovate on that site? And then there are major issues that are discovered at a later time or later caused by a future expansion or of the Knox County Stone Quarry. Another issue or concern I have is, has the district ever experienced a renovation of that size regarding scenario 1 that was laid out there for Antonia School? While it was outside the budget allowed, it seemed to be a pretty major renovation. One that I could stand behind if it addresses all our concerns. But such renovation is going to take some time, and has the board considered the impact of such renovation if we proceed with that? It would certainly carry over to the school year and can cause some major logistical safety concerns, as well as causing some safety issues. So given the 9 acres we have, there's not a lot of room to work with there. So if we're going to propose doing some major demo, repaving, etc., I know it would be in phases, but that could certainly impact what our students enjoy there today. So I'm going to leave you with the question, is this really the best long-term option that we have for Antonia Elementary and our students there? And again, I like that there are options. I like that the board has reviewed and looked at some different options and has laid some out there. But I truly believe that further consideration and analysis needs to be performed, along with, no kidding, feasible options proposed before I would consider approving and voting yes on the Prop P. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last comment this evening is from Pam Cullen, also wants to speak on Prop P at Antonia Elementary.
Wow, I'm really short, sorry. Good afternoon. I have 3 wonderful kids that are finally have all made it into Antonia, and one that's made it through Antonia, and it's now at Seckman High School. So, yes, 14 out of 15 straight years, I'm an Antonia mom. So I have got to know the staff in the building and the different items like that. After looking at the spreadsheet that was provided in the December meeting, Fox High School was budgeted for $12 million for a new instructional wing that would include the science, art, and facts. Antonia Elementary was listed for possibly being rebuilt on the 180-plus acres where Antonia Middle School is. The budget for that was listed at $16,500,000. On the spreadsheet that was provided and voted on in January, another $2 million was added to the budget for Fox, bringing that total to $14 million. Antonia changed from having a new building to a partial rebuild with a budget of $7 million. Our new building was quoted at $2,500,000 more than what you've now decided to spend on a high school wing. I know Fox needs updates and they deserve it, and so this is in no way, shape, or form claiming that they don't, because they definitely do. But we are concerned that you're not going to be able to make all of the needed changes at our school for under $7 million if it costs $14 million for a high school wing. As taxpayers, we wonder if this is the best financial decision. After looking at the facility assessments, I'm happy to know that our building is safe for our children to be in. But I'm also extremely concerned with all the work that needs to be done. Both companies provided 2 design scenarios. One company had the 2 lowest options. Option 1 is quoted at $6,058,943. It includes a stair lift in our already very crowded and narrow hallways. No elevator. It shows that it would serve for about 10 to 15 years. The second option they had was almost $10 million with everything from the first option with a small addition with an elevator. The second company estimated their lowest cost project at $12 million and their highest a little over $18 million. Remember in December, it showed we could have an entire new building for $16,500,000. About. We understand changes can be made to the scenarios. That's not solid and the only 4 ways that we can have it. But with 3 out of 4 scenarios being millions of dollars over budget, and the one that's under budget doesn't discuss problems like plumbing, sewage, parking, or even an elevator, we're concerned on how you're going to be able to do everything that needs to be done in $7 million. Here are a few questions I've heard from the community. Obviously, you're not going to be able to answer them now, but just so you know. If there's an addition, are we going to be losing parking, playground space, bus parking, storage? Our property's already small. We're concerned on how it's going to work. What's the timeline for this rebuild? As others mentioned, is this going to affect students and staff during the school year? And what are the plans for the other items needed? And what are the current plans regarding Antonia Middle School campus, since we're not looking at moving the elementary there at this time? Please let the taxpayers and families know how doing a partial rebuild is the best long-term decision for the students and the best use of taxpayer money. We really all do want to support Prop P. Please do not think that the Antonia family is here saying that we don't want to. But the community needs to know the facts so that we can make educated decisions. We need to know that this is the best decision for our kids, our community, and our taxpayers. Thank you all.
Thank you. This meeting this evening is going to be a little different than we normally have. And before we start answering and asking questions or comments from the other board members, I'd just like to kind of run over some information with you. It's very difficult to take $40 million and try to make $100 million in repairs and new buildings. And so this board has been given a really difficult job to decide where would be the best for our kids, and that's what we're trying to work for. And just kind of go over how this suggested budget came into place. The board members, along with Dr. Patel, visited all the buildings in the district and talked about the facilities. And then they went to the principals, because they live these buildings every day, and they said, what are your needs? I mean, we can see some things, but some things are there that we don't see. The principals submitted their list to the administration office, and those lists were compared and kind of compressed down to what they felt were the major issues in our buildings. Then, once that information was put together, the board members were sent individual information, an individual request, and said, we did not do it as a board meeting, we did not do it as a group. Dr. Patel said, we want to hear from each individual board member what they want to see happen. And so each individual board member was asked to come up with their suggestions so that all of this information could be compiled. Now, when we voted to put Prop P, I'm sorry, I keep saying Prop S. When we voted to put Prop P on the ballot, that had nothing to do with our budgeting the funds. That has to do with just putting it on the ballot. The budgeting of these funds are still being scrutinized and looked at, and several of you mentioned the turf. That's already out. There's not going to be any new turf with this $40 million. So this budget and these ideas and these thoughts have been put together by a lot of people. And unfortunately, you just can't stretch the money very far. So if you think that when you look at this budget that is the gospel, it's not. It's still under discussion. Until or unless Prop P passes, we're kind of limited to how much information we can give you, because we can't have an architect come and look at your building and say, we want to do this and this and this, even though we have ideas what we'd like to see done. Until we know for sure we're going to be able to do it, we don't want to spend money that's not going to be beneficial. So a lot of things that you're hearing and seeing are really very much up in the air. None of this, we cannot say that this is absolutely what's going to happen. Dr. Patel is still looking at the list. The board members are still looking at the list. And this evening, we have a couple of other comments and suggestions that we would like to see addressed also. So don't be too upset about this list. This is, it's already been changed 3 times because of input from different people. So this has got a long way to go. The first thing we have to do is pass Prop P. So at this time, I'm going to ask Dr. Patel for comments, and then the board members will continue to address these issues for you. Thank you.
I think first and foremost, I want to thank our staff and our parents that are here in the audience today, because once again, it makes me proud to be a part of this community, because it shows that our parents and our staff have a voice in this district, and that is what we want. Our district belongs to our students, our staff, and our parents. We are here to make difficult decisions, and we make them all the time. But to me, to see you guys out there and giving us patron comments, I think kudos to you. And we would love to see that more and more because it's showing that you are owning this district, and you should own it. Not everyone is going to be happy with all the decisions. We know that. Do we all want a new Antonia Elementary School? 110%. I think every board member here wants a new school, every staff member, every kid, every parent. We do. There's no doubt about that. But we also know that we are limited in our funds. That is our current reality. I know that Ms. Yanta already went through the process, but I want to go through the process as well of how we got to Prop P. We started, honestly, in my opinion, we started with Prop S, where we had all the community engagement forums. We had parents coming in. We gave them a voice. We had teachers. We had principals. We sat around and we said, what do our buildings need? Then, obviously, we put Prop S. It did not pass. Then we're left with the, okay, what do we do now? So then, you know, with this board, their guidance was, we want to hear from every building principal. So Mr. Brazil, Mr. Barbagallo, and I went to each building principal, sat down and said, give us your top 5, knowing Prop S did not pass, knowing we don't have $70 million. What would be your top 5 needs? And they gave us that. We compiled it. Then Mr. Brazil, Mr. Barbagallo, and I sat down and said, the principals have their lens, but what do we as district administrators see the need? What are they? Where are they? We compiled a list, and then we sat down and looked at the principals' top 5s. We looked at our district administrators' list. We made a proposal that I think, Ms. Cullen, you referenced maybe for the December one. I can't remember which board meeting. But we put down, and if you look at the very top of that proposal, it says district administration proposal. That is what we thought from our lens should occur. Now, again, that is not our decision. We all want to be united on that. So we came up with our district priorities, presented it to the board. The board gave us input, ideas, suggestions, and we reworked some of those priorities and we presented it again. That is everyone's title to do that. Everyone had a voice in that process when I say district administrators, principals. I think at this point, you know, obviously the board, we sat down at the last meeting, we approved the ballot, Prop P. We're going for $40 million. But I think what we are right now is we're in a critical juncture in our district. As I said in the beginning, we're not all going to be happy. But I keep thinking of Abraham Lincoln's famous words, a house divided cannot stand. A house divided cannot stand. And I am going to tell you that we need Prop P. You all know we need Prop P. It may be the first step of many steps, and it may not be ideal. But at the end of the day, we cannot sit here and say that this is, and I know you're not, but none of us are, but this is good for our kids. It's not ideal. I wish it was. I wish it was ideal. So when I think of Prop P, I think purpose, promise, progress. And I hope that it is a little bit of progress for this district because we need that. We need to start somewhere. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. I think we will go towards each board member, and maybe some of the questions or comments that our patrons had, you might answer or give your suggestions or your input on Prop P.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Okay,
Mr.
go
Shalou,
ahead.
one more thing. I did want to clarify the turf, because I know that I have heard that from several parents, and I don't want you to be upset about that. That was us trying to be transparent as possible, knowing that a turf field lifespan is about 10 to 12 years. Knowing that that was going to be an expense coming up, we wanted to put it on paper saying, looking ahead, it's going to come up. Point of clarification, the turf field was never part of Prop P. That was going to come out of budgeted capital improvement projects in the near future, so within the next 5 years. We've taken it off because it never was part of bond issue money. It was going to be budgeted. But we wanted to be transparent in the sense that 2 years from now, all of a sudden, if we're putting in turf fields, you guys aren't going, Why are we putting in turf fields? We just wanted to be completely transparent. But we understand the concerns, and that has been taken off. But again, it was never part of the bond issue.
I too appreciate the passion and the care that you have for representing and advocating for your schools. I know that's important. My experience in the district's been a little different than many. Truth is, I built my first house right above Antonia School in Hickory Heights. I taught at Merrimack Heights. I attended Fox High School. I was principal at Fox Elementary. And so I've had a lot of experience in all these schools. I've also had experience with a number of bond issues. Here's what I know about every bond issue. It's designed for a set amount of money, and you have to work to a budget. We got $40 million to work with. And so the question is, what are our needs? What can we do to make sure that every kid is in a comfortable school environment that's safe and conducive to learning? That's the very first thing that we have to do. Now, I can tell you, the people at Fox Elementary and Fox Middle can make a case for building a new school. The people at Merrimack Heights, trust me, they can make a case for building a new school. Fox High School, trust me, they can make a case for building a new school. The truth is, all those folks could make a case for building a new school. Probably Sherwood could, not Sherwood, but Seckman. But the truth is, we have $40 million to work with. So as a board member, the issue that I have to deal with and I have to square with myself is, how can I make sure that every kid is in a comfortable environment that's conducive for learning? Maybe not all that we want. And so the issue is that we've got to make sure that we work to those budget numbers to where everybody's accommodated. Now, to spend 40% of our money on just Antonio, that would mean that Dr. Sherp over there would have to give up quite a bit. It would mean that Dr. Bain back there would have to give up a lot of money on his schools too. But we're not giving up money on the schools, we're giving money up on kids. My vision has always been, and I took the tour of all the buildings and I was there at Antonia, and by the way, you guys have done a great job of keeping that building very nice. It's really pretty impressive inside how you've kept it painted and all that business. But the truth is, my vision was, what can we do to make sure that the kids in Antonia School have a comfortable, how much money would it take for us to get to the point where they have a comfortable environment that's conducive for learning? Because I want them to spend their 5-6 years in elementary school in a nice environment. And after that 5 years, they get to go to a relatively almost brand new middle school. And then after 3 years, they get to go to a high school that is our newest high school in the school district. All very nice environments. So the goal is, the vision is, how can we make that environment good and make the environment good at Merrimack Heights and make the environment good at Fox High School, and take care of a lot of the other things. This bond issue is kind of a renovation bond issue. It's not the kind of bond issue that you can go out and build buildings with. It's just, we just don't have that much money. And so how do we take care of all our kids? And so that's the limitation. Now, there's probably little modifications that can be made, you know, to make it better for each school. Maybe we're spending a little bit more money here than we need to spend, a little less there, but the truth is, we're trying to do our very best to make sure that every kid is in an environment that's conducive to learning. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Mrs. Hanson?
I too want to thank everybody for coming here, and
Vicki, excuse me, be sure you're talking
I'm sorry,
into the mic.
my voice is deep and I don't bring the microphone close enough to me. I just wanted to thank everybody again for their input, and I'd really like to invite people from the community. Taking the tours of the buildings, you know, it's been almost 12 years since I've been through all the buildings since being on the board and retiring. And it was really eye-opening to see the conditions of all the buildings. I mean, there are needs in every single building. And that's what the dilemma is trying to meet all those needs. Now, we can't meet all of them perfectly, but we can prioritize those. And so I'm going to offer, if anybody wants to take a tour through the buildings, I'm sure Dr. Patel and the staff would help, but I'll take you on a tour too, because I think when you see Antonia has needs, there's a lot of buildings in the district that have needs. Rockport, Hamrick, I mean, you could go on and on. And for me, I think we have to make sure essential things are done: HVAC, plumbing, electrical, water. Those things have to be a top priority. And with all of the additions, if we're looking at additions at Antonia and Fox and Merrimack Heights, the numbers that were proposed in the budgets are proposals. Nobody will know exactly until an architect gets in there, is hired, and gets there and looks at it. And I would agree completely, sorry I forgot your name, with the man who's speaking about the quality. We have to look at Antonia. I know there's always been issues with water, and that has to be looked at. So to make sure that if you're renovating a building, you don't put it up in a situation where something's going to reoccur, and you have to look at structural issues. So to me, those are big things, as well as safety and security at all the buildings. Some of those needs could be different at different sites. I know some of the buildings have issues, not necessarily with the main entrances, but the doors maybe don't close real tight at various locations, and that's a security issue. So some of the things are big and some of the things are little. And if there's enough money, to me, one of the other important things is at Seckman Middle School, we have 6 teachers that don't have classrooms. And so if there's any way we would have enough money to add some classrooms at Seckman Middle School, that would be a good thing. And at Sherwood, anybody that goes by the rec center knows at certain times of the day, you cannot get down Church Road because Sherwood is coming or going from school. So that drive there would be another thing that would be, it's a community issue as well as an issue for Sherwood. So, but I do mean that sincerely. I would encourage everybody to, so the list isn't, as Dr. Patel said, it's not something that's been decided, because sometimes when you get in a building, you'll find something else, and you do have to make adjustments as you go through the process.
Thank you. Dr. Stewart?
I think we have to go back and look at Prop S. We did ask the community, this board, we went out, we asked the community for more funds and frankly, this question would have been moot. The community gave us the message that they thought we needed to tighten things up. I don't think anybody's happy. In fact, I know nobody's happy at the fact that we're not building a new school in Antonia Elementary. I think the important point is that at all 3 schools we're doing significant renovations on: Merrimack Heights, Antonia Elementary, Fox High School. All 3 of those schools, the building is a rate limiting step. There are spots and areas in all 3 of those that are just absolutely not conducive to learning. I've seen nicer barns in a couple of those spots than what's going on in some of those buildings. And so I think nobody's happy. We're trying to do the best we can with limited resources. We've turned this over 12 ways from Sunday trying to figure it out. And this is the best allocation I can come up to try to be equitable to all the students in the district. Thank you.
Ms. Smith?
In taking the tours of the buildings, they are old, and I at the time when we took them, as we left each building, we were so impressed with how, and I was there at Sherwood, how wonderful the teachers make the building look and how inviting it makes it for kids. When I first came on the board in April, since April, we've been told that enrollment's going down, that enrollment is going down, and that possibly a building would need to be closed. And so for us to say to the community, we might have to close a building, but we're going to build a new one, they wouldn't like that very much. And so We up here, I mean, this has been discussed over and over and over again. We all, I can tell you that every single person up here would like to see a new Antonia. And in doing all of this, we had hoped to present like a 3-year plan and a 5-year plan, and as Dr. Patel tried to do that, those things got pulled by the public into the bond issue. And people didn't understand that these weren't things for the bond, but just to show you that down the road, these were the things we were going to do. And one thing that has been discussed is if we can responsibly use this money and show that we're making improvements, we're doing the things we say we're going to do, we're taking care of the air conditioning and heating in buildings, then in 2 years or 3 years, put another tax increase on the bond issue and build a new school. And so it's not that we don't want to do that. We really do want to do that. But we can't tell the community that enrollment's going down and we might need to close an elementary and then turn around and build an elementary. So, you know, in thinking about all of this, if we could, you know, put an addition on with an elevator, get all of your special ed students into that building, get art moved in, get music, so that everything's right there, even with the gym, even with the cafeteria, build a new playground back towards the building, put the parking out there, get the playground away from the highway, get the playground back there, you'll have more parking out front. Then it's not that, I know in some of the architects' things that said, well, then that building would be good for another 20 years. That's not our idea, that you would be in that building as an elementary school for 20 years. That's not our idea at all. Our idea is that in the near future, when we prove ourselves to the community that we could get a tax increase in 2 or 3 years and build a new Antonia on the campus out there. That is really the heart of everybody up here. And you know, in the future, the old Antonia with that addition could be used as an early childhood center at the south end of our campus. There are lots of things that could be used later, but to spend the money equitably and evenly and help everybody. I mean, if you have never been in the buildings at Fox High School out there, they were never intended to be permanent structures. It's like walking into a metal shed that you keep your lawnmower in. And that's where they're having art, or that's where they're having their different classes. And as you walk through the halls, it's like walking through little dungeons, going into another. So if you haven't ever been there, it's really important. And Mr. Shalou started, he said some of this, but and he did say this, the kids at Fox Elementary go to an old school. They go to one of the oldest buildings for middle school, and they go to the oldest high school with these outbuildings that are really bad. And at least the kids at Antonia get to go to a new middle school and a newer high school. So the path each of these kids is taking is a little bit different. And so we've tried to find the best way to spend the money to better the betterment for the kids. And like I said, the teachers in every building we went in have done such an incredible job of making it an inviting environment. I had a man walk up to me in Walmart. I have no idea who he was. He stuck his finger in my face and he told me, do not put a tax increase on the bond issue on the ballot. And I put my finger in his face. This was in November, and I said, let me tell you, I just left Antonia Elementary School where 5th grade has no heat. And he said, really? And I said, I don't know how we can convey this to you so that people understand, but you need to understand our buildings are falling apart. And so we don't want you to feel like we are abandoning you by any means. Our goal is to, in the near future, when we prove ourselves to the district, once again, to the community, to put a tax increase bond issue on the ballot, hopefully in the near future. You know, it's going to take 2 or 3 years just to get this done. And we want to prove that we can do that and we can show that we're responsible. And then every person up here would like to see you have a new Antonia Elementary School. You know, will it be in your children's lifetime? For some of you, they may have moved on. But for those of you who are just hoping, I mean, I had a call today from a lady who said, my children won't benefit, but I'm worried about the kids later. So that's what we are too. We're worried about those kids later. But we're also worried about the kids at Fox High School. There are people in this room that attended Fox High School in those metal sheds, and those metal sheds are still there. And we need to remedy that. and we need to share the wealth, and we can't be totally selfish. And so in looking at all of this, these are really hard decisions. Sometimes I just want to bawl. I go home and I'm thinking, how can you make everybody happy? Because I am very passionate, just as you are, about your school. And so, that's really all we can tell you, that we want the best for you too. And just by adding this and getting your kids out of the basement, art out of the basement, for a little while, that would help until we can build a new Antonia Elementary.
Thank you, Judy. Dawn?
I don't think I have anything more to say. Everyone has done a great job, but I wanted to thank you for the public comments. It's really great to have you here sharing your perspective. It means a lot. Thank you.
So it's interesting, a lot of the comments so far. I think probably one of the things that I'd like to say is, while everybody has thoughts about how we should be doing things, what we should be doing, maybe I'll be the first to say that I don't want to decide where the money goes because I'm not an expert. Mr. Barbagallo is an expert. He's the one who runs our facilities. We have other people that are really smart. As you know, when we have tough decisions that we need to make, typically what a leader does is they get people together that are really smart, that have a stake in the game, and they make decisions that are good for everybody. And I think that's what we did with Prop S when we put all the committees together and we let the community and we let the parents set our priorities and decide what was important for the school and what was important for our children. And yet when money gets involved, we turn things into politics, and we turn things into things that where money changes our decisions and where money changes how we act. And is it possible that maybe we're actually forgetting about the students that don't come to school with a coat, don't have the money to pay for a field trip? Are we potentially all in a jar full of candy trying to pull it out for our purposes? I want something done at Fox because I used to go to Fox. I want something done in Antonia because my kids went there. Well, I mean, that's what I'd vote for, right? My kids go to Antonia. It's just interesting to me that maybe we're losing a little bit of perspective, and maybe that we have subject matter experts on the topic, and that we maybe need to take a step back and look at how we're approaching the topic. I think everybody knows for sure that we need the $40 million. Obviously, we needed the $70 million. More importantly, as Dr. Patel has said in the past, we need $150 million. If we all don't get together as a community and we all don't decide things for the students, I don't believe that we'll like the picture 3 years or 5 years from now. Thanks.
Dr. Patel, do you have other comments? No. It's interesting to hear from all the board members, even though this is sort of what I have heard in the past. I just want to mention that I was a little confused with the first information that came out in the spreadsheet, because I'm looking at HVAC systems and I'm thinking that's really priority, and it was kind of spread out over 5 years. Well, I had to ask the expert, Mr. Brazil, to explain it to me because I'm not real sure about finances. And he has put together a different spreadsheet that's actually separated our projected expenses that are in the budget and the expenses that we had asked to be included in the bond issue. So it made it a little bit easier for me to understand and much easier for you to look at and see where we're coming from. The other thing I wanted to mention, that there is $2.2 million left that has not been allocated anywhere. And we have some needs that has not been addressed, and those are some of the things we're going to be looking at. Also, who knows how much is going to have to be spent on any of these buildings until an architect comes in and actually does the paperwork and submits bids. Now, Mr. Brazil has given us a pretty good idea of what it's gonna cost us. But you know, when you start on this, you could always run into some kind of issues that have to have additional funds. So that $2.2 million may have to be used for additional funding for some of these projects that we're gonna be doing. Once we get into that, I feel like we do need a reserve there, but I'm not so sure that we need to keep 2.2 on the table. In my mind, there could be another $1 million there that could be utilized in some of these other issues, such as new classrooms for Seckman that teachers are teaching from a cart. Those kind of things need to also be addressed as time goes on. I don't know much else to say except thank you very much for coming. Appreciate your comments. Hearing what your concerns are helps us to know what our concerns are. And I think just realizing that we see that you have water in your basement where kids should not be having classes. Absolutely. And those are some of the things that we have seen when we've gone through your buildings. We've seen that. And we appreciate what you've done to make it work for your building. You principals and staff are amazing in making things look good and work well for what you have to work with. And that is so obvious when you tour these buildings and you say, but wait a minute, why do you want this? And they say, well, look, and they move a desk or they move a bookcase, and behind there is cracked walls and like this. And so we know that you're doing your best to make your buildings look nice, but there's so many hidden things that we're not aware of. So it's been really an eye-opener to have the principals so involved in this. And I think as time goes on and we get a little more feedback from everybody and past Prop P, that you will be able to see a big difference in your building. I can tell you that I have had a couple of emails from people that have said, hey, don't do this, don't let us down. And the very things that they mentioned that they were concerned about are the exact things that we as board members and administrators saw in your building. We saw that you have kids in a basement that is damp. We saw that you have wiring that looks like it needs to be replaced. We know that you need a new entrance. We know that you need an elevator in that building. So we know that we have to do something about the water coming in where it has happened many, many times that you've dealt with. So we're aware of the situations at Antonia Elementary. And believe me, it would be wonderful if we could just put up a new building. But at this point, and I will say for myself, I can't in good conscience say, let's build a new elementary and take away all these other things that are needed in the district. Again, I appreciate you coming. Please stay in touch with us. We're very willing to have meetings, community meetings, come to your building. Your principal is sitting back there, and I think he has talked to a few of you. So just know that we understand and that we're all working for the same thing here, is to pass Prop P so we can start on some of these issues. Anybody else have any comments? Yes, Vicki.
Carol, I was wondering if, John, if you could explain to everyone, remind me again, because it's not my area of expertise either, what's the time frame for utilizing the bond money, and then the 5-year capital project funds, those are completely separated and would be budgeted in the budget for those other repairs. If you could kind of go over that, how that works.
Vicki, you're correct. We've got two lists there. One is for a kind of a 5-year outlook on potential potential budgetary issue things. It's things that we see from our vantage point today that may need addressing. During the next 5 years, there'll be additional things that come to our awareness that we need to deal with as well. But it's to start formulating what that outlook looks like. You are correct. Earlier there was a statement about artificial turf. We did put that on there as a placeholder that has a lifespan, like everything has a lifespan, and at some point it needs to be tended to. So that's the budget side of things. The bond issue allocations are allocations of dollars from a bond issue. We will, in the design phase and development phase, have to design to those numbers. And it will affect the project in some way, but it's certainly doable. Those are realistic allocations of resources to achieve good outcomes in each of those projects. Some of those projects on that list will be able to advance fairly quickly. Design efforts are smaller, and they can proceed towards bidding and construction in a shorter fashion. But I would expect most of those would be probably summer of 2021 projects. Other projects, like the three large ones, Fox, the classroom wing at Fox, the Merrimack Heights project, the Antonia project, could be in development for 9 to 15 months as we seek to make those the best projects possible. And then they could be in construction for 9 to 18 months, depending on how large they are. So, you're looking at spending 3 to 4 years of spending this money. I anticipate that you wouldn't issue this bond issue in one $40 million event. It might be a $25 million event and a $15 million event spread apart by several months. This district has very low debt historically right now, especially over the last decade. But it's never had a event this big either. We've never done a $40 million borrowing. And in today's world, for a district our size, 40 million really isn't that big, but for this district it is. And we need to seek voter approval of this, and then we need to carefully move forward as we design these projects and build them so that they're the best they can be.
Sorry, is there a requirement in the law, a time frame in which the whole $40 million would need to be utilized? That has to be there, or can that, depending on how long the project take, it could take, you can utilize the money until you've gotten everything done?
What's before the voters is an authorization approval. So
Okay.
we're seeking a $40 million authorization. There is no timeline associated with issuing the debt. However, once you issue the debt, you have, under tax law, 3 years to spend it. So you don't want to issue it until you have your spending plan well organized. So I suggest, again, that you're going to probably want to issue this in two pieces. One to handle one or two of those projects, and the balance to handle the rest of it. Again, part of this design of this project is reliant upon shrinking our Fund 3 debt, our general obligation debt, further. We're shrinking it every year as we pay it down. Right now, if we went to market with this, we're not going to be able to issue $40 million. We're going to have further shrinkage, which will occur over the next 3 years. And by 3 years out, I would expect, as assessed value grows and as debt gets paid down, that $40 million is well within our reach to issue.
Any other comments? Dr. Gilman and Dr. Cardona, do you have something to say this evening about these projects? They're affecting your buildings.
I think it's been well covered this evening. I don't really have a ton to add. I do agree that it is a difficult situation when you have such need, and trying to spread those dollars over that need. It is a difficult task for sure.
I would just like to add that spending money, finding money to spend is always difficult. And when all of our hearts are about our kids, and we try to do what we can do and spread it as far as we can, that's where the difficult task comes in at. And of course, my heart, I started my teaching career at Antonia Elementary. That's where I started. Had a classroom there. And we know that it needs lots in that building. And I also know that we are going to continue to work and put the best plan in place so that we can support our kids and we can have great schools in our communities that our parents and our community can be proud for their students to come to.
Thank you. If there's no other comments from the board, I'm ready for our meeting to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
On this.